He's coming. Yeah, he's coming. He's coming.
Whoa!
He's coming. He's coming.
Yes! Yes!
Christopher, then you know what? Then maybe that you've got a problem because
Whoa!
This your boy, Chris Cross. Welcome to the first episode. This is episode one of many, hopefully. Now, if you see me before, you see me on the TC MMA podcast, strictly MMA, UFC, predictions, live streams, post-fight reactions, all that type of stuff. You can see me as well there at TC MMA podcast if you like UFC. Now, we're going to get into some of UFC here as well, right? Sports. We're going to get into sports. We're going to get into politics a little bit, but politics is a sport, right? If you don't take it too serious, politics is a sport. News and then analysis. So those are kind of the areas that we'll cover here on the show as we move forward. So today, a couple of interesting topics coming out. One of the more interesting ones to me is Dan Bongino, current FBI director, is saying, or telling people at least, according to CNN, that he might resign. And we don't need to go into too much detail because everyone knows why he would resign. And we're going to dig a little bit deeper into that. In the NFL, story coming out from the Chargers running back Najee Harris, if you haven't already heard, was injured in a fireworks mishap. That's according to NBC News. We'll discuss that. Also, Miami Dolphins. That's my team, baby. Right? I know you're new to me. Miami Dolphins, that's my team. So they're in the news. Did they get better or worse with all the transactions? Lord have mercy. All the transactions going on prior to this upcoming season. The GM, Greer, is either going to look like a genius or a dud. There's just no... McDaniel, the head coach, we'll get into that. I have a little bit different take than most people on that topic. But the most interesting, the most interesting thing I wanted to get into today is to discuss, when we talk about analysis, I'm a math person, so, we're going to get into some political issues, real light. There's going to be a lot about sports and things like that. But when we do get into politics, I'm going to try to steer towards the numbers, right? Because to me, the numbers don't lie. There's a lot of social issues that happen, from one president to another. But as time goes on, those fade away and the numbers stick out, right? The numbers definitely stick out. So let's discuss some numbers here. We're going to talk about debt versus GDP. That's a main tracker where you can look back 20 years ago and you can say, well, that was a good president or a bad president. There might have been a lot of other stuff that happened during those 4 or 8 years, but debt versus GDP. And what does that mean? Okay. When we talk about debt, it's just like your household. We all know right now the national debt is 36 trillion and the GDP is 30 trillion. That means we have more debt than gross domestic product over a year period. That would be like you making 30 grand a year, base number, and you have about 40 grand in debt. That's not a good situation. Now, what we'll also talk about is if you have 40 grand in debt, same number, debt. But instead of making 30 grand a year, you're making 300 grand a year, and you got 40% debt. That's not a big deal. That's like 15% roughly, give or take, 13, 14% of your debt compared to what you're earning each year, right? So that's the basic understanding of debt versus GDP. The debt is a number. Presidents are always going to be behind the scenes worried about getting this GDP up. And right now it's 30 trillion, but our debt is 36 trillion. Our debt is 120% of our GDP right now. That when you get over 100%, that's when you're in a bad territory. Now, what we need to understand about debt is that debt is always going to go up. All right. And I know people are going to have a problem with that because we are also looking at it from our own household. No, we can take down the debt. But the fact is that debt's always going to go up. Once you start lending money, those, you lend someone 100 grand, or not even lend. The government creates 100 grand. Let's just say base number, the interest they're going to pay back is 50 grand. So they're going to pay back 150 on that 100 grand that they borrowed. Where's that 50 grand come from? It didn't exist. From day one, it didn't exist. So you have to borrow more money on top of the 100 to pay off that 50 grand interest. Okay. So that just leads to perpetual borrow. So when people say we need to bring down the debt, I don't even take them seriously. And the problem is everybody's saying that. And I listen to people that say that, so I shouldn't say I don't take them serious. But when they get into the economics and the numbers and the debt, and they say we got to bring down the debt, forget it. Get closer to balancing the budget, I'm with you. Bring down the debt, you sound crazy. You got to get the GDP up. So that's the basic outline of what we're going to get into. And here is the numbers. It's real simple. So the overall graph, what you're looking at here, is like basically 1970 to the left. You see the blue line really low, all the way to 2025 right now. It doesn't take a genius in math class to see that thing is going up from left to right. So if you're an algebra student right now, it's a positive slope. Okay, it's a positive slope. It's negative. It's not good, but it's a positive slope. So you're looking at, in like, let's just say 1970 roughly, it's under 40%. It's closer to like 30%. And then it then goes all the way up to right now 120%. So that's where it's gone over the last 50 years. 30% versus 120% means it's out of control. All right. That means it's out of control. But it's not the end of the world either. All right. So you have to understand what these presidents are trying to do. These presidents are trying to get GDP up. So right now, if we owe 36 trillion, let's just say Trump, for example, in the present, can get the GDP up to 36 trillion, then we're back from 120 to 100%. The debt is not coming down, ladies and gentlemen. You have got to continue boosting the economy at all costs. This is why you see the tariffs. This is why you see low taxes. This is why you see Trump wanting the Fed to lower the interest rates. Like, you need money in the economy. Of course, there's always the fear of the inflation, but you got to get this economy booming. So Trump is always acting on that. All right. Will he be successful or not? We don't know. We just don't know yet. All right. But that's why he's trying to get the economy going. Now, let's go back. We're going to start at 1980, because from like 1960 to 1980, it kind of leveled off. It was under 40%. It was looking not bad. And then you see here Ronald Reagan just took this thing up quite a ways. Okay. He took this thing up quite a ways. So you're looking at, yeah, I mean, he took this thing all the way up, what, near 50 roughly? From around 30-something% to 50. Okay. So that started it. So we look at Ronald Reagan, and I'm a conservative mostly, liberal on social issues a lot of times, but conservative fiscally, financially, budget, debt, all that stuff as much as I can be. But I have to be realistic. Those conservatives like myself look back and we're like, Reagan, great president, you know what I mean? But when you look at the numbers, that debt went from 30 to 50%. Not good. That means the debt outpaced the economy. That's not good. Okay. And this is what conservatives should be saying as well. Then when you go to Clinton, listen, I hate to say it. I've been telling people in my inner circle around me that are conservatives and liberals, I'm like, listen, as much as I preach, when you look at the numbers, it's not good for conservatives. Look at Clinton. Clinton didn't erase it all. It went up a little bit there at first, right? But he nearly erased all the negative debt to GDP that Reagan had. He brought it back down. I mean, and you're not going to see this again, okay? Well, you will when you get to Biden. But this thing went down. Probably one of the better presidents according to debt versus GDP, which should be a major outlier, a major talking point, and what we should be focused on, was one of the better presidents over the last 5 or 6. There's just no other way about it. Now, there were all the issues and things like that, but listen, at the end of the day, the numbers are what matter. And where are we at right now, right? What's real life in terms of numbers. Numbers are real life. There's no way to go around them. All right, you're going to hear me say that a lot of times. And it doesn't mean I don't care about the other issues. I'm just trying to get back to the basics, okay? Clinton brought this percentage down, bottom line. Then we get into trouble here with Bush Jr., and then next up, you're going to see Obama, right? So from Bush Jr. to Obama, this thing went from around 50-something percent, all the way up to right at 100%, right around there. It's not good, okay? So both in the same boat. Bush wasn't doing bad, okay? It wasn't doing bad, but the slope is consistently going up, okay? It's going up by 5, 6, 7%. That's manageable, all right? But the debt is still outpacing the economy. And then at the end, boom, that's not good, okay? In comes Obama, and he just continues the same pace as Bush at the end. So when you look at the numbers, it's hard for me to say, just based on the numbers, forget all the other stuff for a second. I know that's hard. Trust me. But Obama and Bush Jr. brought this thing way up, all right? Then in comes Trump around, of course, he won the 2016 election. This is in 2017. You can see not a bad job, right? So when he talks about how the economy was going and we were booming and things like that, he's not really lying, all right? Now, you can say, yeah, that Trump increased the debt like crazy in his first term, but he also increased the economy like crazy. That's why it's flat, okay? And then what happened to the right there when it skyrocketed? COVID happened, okay? But again, that's in our recent memory. When you look back at Reagan and say there was a COVID situation during Reagan or whatever his was, that's going to be minimized compared to the numbers. So at the end of the day, even though Trump started out good, the COVID thing, people are going to not necessarily forget about that. How could you? But it just means that from beginning to end, the debt outpaced the economy, more or less, at the end of the day, from beginning to end. All right. Then Biden benefits from opening the economy back up, right? So that all of a sudden the debt's not, see, when you see this thing go down, the debt is not going down. Biden's getting the economy going, all right? And he would say, and again, again, I hate to say this, okay? But I was as surprised as some of you may be when I looked at this. The debt didn't come down like this chart is going down for the first 2 years. The economy was booming because all of a sudden when you shut down an economy and you open it back up, the thing come roaring to life. People want to buy, people want to spend, people want to sell, okay? So everything is going crazy, and then by the end it goes back up. But at the end of the day, from left to right, it still went down during the presidency, and he benefited off of the end of COVID. That's the bottom line. He benefited off the end of COVID because a lot of those checks, the debt that was, I don't want to say given out, the debt that was added to help people out when the economy was closed, that destroyed the debt to GDP. But sometimes you have to do that to make it through. I don't know, but that's the way it would appear. The bottom line is here, Biden brought the debt versus GDP down, and that's where we are right now. All right. So Clinton and Biden, regardless of, when, he did it because COVID ended and it opened back up, and Trump, it was dealt with COVID. And of course, all that is at play. Okay. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is Biden and Clinton are the two that brought it down. All right. So now what does Trump have to do? Let's just say it's 36 trillion right now. It's going to be 45 or 46 before he leaves. And then you're going to hear people say, oh, he increased the debt by 10 trillion, 20 trillion, whatever. You got to focus on percentage. I mean, if you go from 2 trillion to 4 trillion, it's no different than going from 36 trillion to 72 trillion. The numbers are just getting bigger, which is really scary, but that's just what's happening. Okay. But you can manage the numbers getting bigger. If Trump just, rough number, takes it from 36 to 45 by the end, which it'll probably be more, but let's just say 45, he's got to get that economy closer, that GDP closer to 42, 43, and hopefully 45. Because then at the end, it's going to look like, okay, he got us back into a fair playing field. 120% GDP coming in, 100% coming out, and now you hand it off to whoever's next, and you hope that it continues in that direction. Okay, but also just going back to the chart for 1 second. All right, going back to Clinton, right? Clinton was doing a heck of a job, and then there was a huge election in 2000. What happened? The country was completely divided. Did we go the right way with Bush Jr.? Because according to debt to GDP, I don't know. But that so that's why that election, if you're a little older, 40s, 50s, you definitely remember that because you're in your 20s when it happened. And that 2000 election was crazy. When it went to the Supreme Court, there was all this stuff going on. It came down to hundreds of thousands of votes in Florida, and Florida was the main state, and that's where I was from. It's just crazy. But that's why that election was so highly contested. That's debt to GDP by a president. No favorites, none of that. Those are just the numbers, and that's the way it is. Now, as we move forward, let's get politics over with. So let's get into Dan Bongino, okay? Dan, the man, Bongino. So, and I know this story fairly well. Dan Bongino was broadcasting out of Stuart, Florida. That's where I spent about 10 years of my life, just north of there in Port St. Lucie. All right. And of course, Bongino was getting into a lot of topics, Epstein, COVID, all that stuff, right? When you're on the radio, like I am right now, or broadcasting or whatever, you feel loose. You feel like you can talk about it from the people's view, right? So you're on the radio, you're going to re-comment, you're going to have call-ins, you're going to do. So your view is from the people, okay? Then when you step on the inside, the view is from not the people, and it should be, but it switches to the view from the political landscape, all right? And I'm not trying to get into the files too much or none of that. I'm just trying to talk to you about Dan Bongino and the fact that he's gone from one end of the spectrum to the other. Yeah. Okay. And that's very difficult. It's very difficult to go from the radio, free, loose view of the people, to now you're on the opposite side. You're seeing things that me and you aren't seeing. Who knows what those are? Who knows if it's a leverage over other people so they can't release it? Who knows? Who knows? Okay. But from our standpoint as a people, we're looking at it like, listen, there's more to this story. We're not buying we're not buying the fact that he did it to himself. Who knows? And listen, that could very well be the way it is. Who am I? I really don't know. But Dan Bongino, I can guarantee you, is seeing everything. And whatever that everything is, he's in a conflicted situation because he still has the recent memory of broadcasting, the view of the people, freely speaking, saying what you want to say. And now let's say when you get to the other side, it's very hard to maintain credibility from the people's perspective because you can't give the people everything they want. That's hard for us to hear, but you can't give us everything you want, even though we want it. We want it right now. You can't give it to us. So he's in a very tough spot. I don't think he resigns, but he's talking to people about it, according to CNN, right? He's told people he is considering resigning between a major clash between the FBI and Justice Department over the continued fallout of the files, the memo, however you want to talk about it. Okay, we all understand. So that's going to be interesting. I think it's 50-50 right now. But also these guys that have gotten around Trump, they start to learn how to play the game. It's just Bongino is taking longer because he's not used to it quite as much. And he's been used to freely speaking from the view of the people. All right? You still have your own view, but the view of the people is what you start to hear and talk. You're like a speaker for the people. Not meaning speaking for the people. I just mean like a speaker. Like the people are shouting and it's coming out the speaker. That's Dan Bongino. And you can't do that in this situation, so it's very tough. Moving on to sports, Chargers running back Najee Harris injured himself in a fireworks mishap. And it had to do with like a superficial eye injury. So, and you remember what happened years ago when Pierre-Paul from, I think, was he still with the Giants at that time? I can't remember, but he hurt his hand bad, right? I mean, to the point where it's obviously not the same. And now this is obviously not as major, but you just got to be careful of these fireworks, man. On 4th of July, I saw some things happen near me. And I'm like, it really opened my eyes. Like, man, you got to be really careful about these fireworks. It could go sideways real quick, and it happens before you even know it happened. And it's done. So luckily he's going to be fine. Hopefully it'll be good for the start of the season. But definitely, if you're him, not where you want to be, right? Eye injuries are terrible because when your eyesight's jacked up, man, you're trying to work out and get right. That's definitely going to mess with you. You're not going to be able to do the same stuff. So that's not good, or maybe rest is a good thing. You never know. You never know in the NFL. Miami Dolphins. Did the Miami Dolphins get better? This is what's being talked about today by the Miami Herald. And really, everything is a wash to me except the cornerback and safety spot. We lost big time on Jalen Ramsey, okay? But it seemed like we were going to lose him anyway. So if you can get yourself to the point where you're like, all right, Jalen Ramsey's gone. What can we get? What can we get for Jalen Ramsey? All right? You can't be mad that we get Minkah Fitzpatrick back. And that's a hard one because, like, we already had Fitzpatrick. But it's a whole different system, new people, all that type of stuff. So at least we got a safety out of it. So the safety, we lost Javon Holland and Jordan Poyer. But we got Minkah Fitzpatrick, and a couple other guys that are going to be kind of, to me, anyone can really win that spot right now. But Fitzpatrick will be on the field. He's going to be a big-time hitter. He's going to break up passes, and he's a solid veteran, probably at the peak right now. So we'll take that. I mean, you can't say that it's great that you lose Jalen Ramsey and you get Minkah Fitzpatrick. It's not a great situation. But if you can get to the point where you're like, okay, we already lost Ramsey. What can we get for him? That's not a bad deal. Then, of course, the tight end swap with Jonnu Smith and Darren Waller. But the whole season comes down to the fact is we don't know if we're going to be 14-3 or 3-14. Right now, the big problem is the cornerback spot. Of course, you lose Jalen Ramsey and Kendall Fuller. Now you got Artie Burns, Kendall Sheffield, and Jason Marshall Jr. And the first question you should be asking is, who? Who? We can't go into the season in this situation, or we're going to get torched on the corners. Tackling on the outside could potentially be a big problem. And it's not to say any of these guys can't step up. Okay, you still got Kohu in the mix as well. More of a nickelback, dimeback, whatever. But can he start on the outside? Will that even be, it's going to have to all play out, but we need another corner with a decent name, and those names are starting to evaporate quickly. And this is where the problem now lies for Greer and GM and head coach Mike McDaniel. We don't know if we're going to be 3-14 or 14-3. And if we don't get off to a good start, like let's just say 4-1, 5-2, 5-3, something like that, the Boo Birds are going to be out, and there might be some people laying down. I hate to say that because it's the NFL, but there's been a lot that's happened in this offseason, and people getting on the mic and things like that and talking about the Dolphins aren't organized. Obviously, you heard Samuel Sr. say that it's being run like a little league team. All these are words. Like in football, if you haven't played football and you played another sport, you might get it. If you never played football, it's hard to understand. But if you played football, you 100% get it. There's all this going on before the season for all 32 teams, right? There's just all this. Your job is to turn off that noise. That's why they put headphones on, right? And we got to focus. And nobody knows what's going to happen when the season starts. We know that the Eagles and the Chiefs are supposed to be good. probably will be good. Might be back in the Super Bowl. Other than those two probable givens, which that's still a big probable, okay? That could go sideways for one of those two teams quick. That's the NFL. But those two are probably going to be good. Everyone else, we don't know. Everything else is a toss-up. We really don't know. Schedules and matchups and all that's going to be a big deal. But I do know for the Miami Dolphins, those cornerbacks, minus Cater Kohu, we can't go into the season with just those guys. Because you got to figure someone's going to get hurt. Someone's going to miss a few games. Now you're going deeper into those names. It's not good. One of those three will stick out, but can't go in with all three of those fighting for two cornerback spots. It's just not. It's not a good situation, and that's where it's at. So, Miami Dolphins. It's going to be a very interesting year, and we'll have to wait and see how it goes down. Now, I know some of you watch me over on the TCMMA podcast. Check us out there at TCMMA podcast. The link is in the description. You got some big UFC things coming up. Of course, this weekend, you got a big fight, heavyweight fight, but the big one is UFC 318 around the corner. You got Poirier versus Holloway 3. It's not your typical championship fight for a legitimate division, but considering the fact that Poirier is about to retire, he's always been a big name. He wants to fight Holloway going out. Holloway dropped Justin Gaethje in the last second of that fight. He's looked good at lightweight. That's going to be a great fight to watch. That is 100% going to be a great fight to watch. Then UFC 319, the fight that I've been waiting for 5 or 6 years. Okay. Might as well lock myself in somewhere where nobody can get to me. And we got Dricus du Plessis versus Hamza for the belt. Hamza Chimaev. And if you don't watch UFC, we're just giving you the quick, big names coming up. There's a lot of other big names in there, but that's the gist of it. So if you want a deeper breakdown of fights, and when I say deeper, I mean deeper, okay? Head over to the TC MMA podcast. But I appreciate y'all. Episode 1 is in the books. That's kind of how the show's going to go. It can go anywhere. It can go left, right, down the middle. We don't know. But we're just going to talk about topics that are relevant right now. And when we inch into politics, we're not going to get too crazy. We're going to focus on the numbers. A lot of times, we get some hot topic. It's like, okay, let me look at the numbers and see what's really happening here and try to give you a neutral perspective, like I just did with the debt versus GDP. I lean more conservative, okay? But we've had 2 Democratic presidents that brought down the debt versus GDP. And all the conservatives like me, the supposed mathematical people, that's why we're conservative, are hiding this and not talking about it. But the debt versus GDP is not on the conservative side. Trump is going to have to flip the script in a quick 4 years to change that tune. And if he can get the GDP over the debt by the time he leaves, that will be a humongous feat for America, because we got to get back into the AAA ratings and all that stuff. So we're not, eaten up by interest. That's the key. When you go get a car, you want to pay 6% interest or you want to pay 29% interest, right? You want to pay 6%. So we got to get this economy booming to get better interest rates. And then borrowing money is a little bit more manageable. But that's where it's at, ladies and gentlemen. This your boy, Chris Cross. We have officially gotten here. We officially made it to episode 1 and made it through. So until next time, we'll see you.